Right, click the links, join channel here over at subscribe side with various other links, Odyssey and whatnot. So Anna, or I got a mailbox, you want to mail me some comics. So Anna, the Star Wars girl, is one of the rare funny women. I mean, kind of in existence, because that really is true that chicks are just not funny. But it's kind of odd that Comicsgate or Phantom Menace or the right wing kind of in general, and I'm not saying that they're on the right. I'm just saying that like it's the not SJW crowd because SJWs have this bizarro purity spiral where they're terrified of saying anything. But has got like funny women, and you're going to find them on the right. Chrissy Mayer, Mandy Summers is really funny. Anyway, so she was banned from C2E2 for being friends with wrong thinkers. The evil Hugo Boss, Ethan Van Sciver, who's a comic book artist who draws Cyberfrog and whatnot, and John Malin, who draws Graveyard Shift and a bunch of other stuff. So these are just people on YouTube who talk about pop culture, and they're wrong thinkers. You look at them like, so what exactly did they do? Oh, I don't know. We just generally don't like anyone who goes against the narrative. Oh, if you're an SJW bleeding vagina, please don't watch this video. Mahalo. Reading those passive aggressive just the fat soy boy comments, it just makes me insane. And the thing is, after I gave the preamble, they stopped leaving those comments. Thank God. So C2E2 engages in blatant discrimination while hosted on a government property, which is important for constitutional civil rights reasons. And the thing is, there's a deeper issue here that it's going to take more time to explore. I think somebody smarter than me can do it. Is why the anti-Comicsgate, anti-fandom menace, the SJW crowd, specifically dealing with Comicsgate, why they're so angry about Comicsgate. And I know there's more going on there with their particular psyche. The left has got a lot of mental illness. In fact, that's objectively been studied, and it's also empirically they'll talk about their mental illness and their medications all the time. In fact, half the time some leftist is in some argument, and you go and look at their profile, and they're talking about like being angry one day. I literally just did this today. I looked at their thing. It's like some chick was talking about being angry because she forgot to take her medication. Like, maybe don't be on the internet. Is all this real? Like people taking mental health stuff. Anyway, so the left has got a lot of mental illness. They got an obsession, and the left can't have fun with anything because they're terrified. So then they purity spiral and stab each other in the back in more ways than one. So Comicsgate banned from C2E2 for what exactly? And Shane Davis is also banned. I don't know anything about him. He's got. I love his delivery. That's all I remember when he's like me, but even slower, I think, in terms of delivery. So I had assumed that the anti-Comicsgate hate movement was over because it's been something like 7 years. I mean, it's been maybe 10 years, depending on how far back you want to go. And I would think that a shrinking industry would seek to build bridges and not blow them up, and they are definitely a shrinking industry. So, and conventions themselves are having some issues. After getting inspired by Myers of diversity in comics to examine comics and the people who made them, I have learned that it's like having a pass into a mental institution. Never have I seen such a collection of deranged echo chamber nut jobs who get triggered over the most minute and imagined bit of wrong thing, one little faux pas, and these people will never forget it. And it led me into the study of the left in general, where I started making BitChute videos to study these Marxist parasites and their particular mental illnesses that make them such. The people involved in comics, the mainstream, are the most racist, hateful, bitter, petty, jealous people I've ever come across, and many of them in a more sane world would be in a mental institution. They admit their mental illnesses themselves on social media, and they don't see the humor in talking about, like, they have these very strong opinions on one hand where they want to change society according to their matrix, and then they talk about how mentally ill and depressed they are. You go, wait a minute. That doesn't seem like you'd be the best person to be the societal designer, the civilization builder. Perhaps get your own house in order first. So the whole thing is a collection of obese soy boys and cat ladies. Whatever the current thing is, they're on board, and they trust the media and government totally. They're raging for the machine and funded by Larry Fink and Soros and Chase Bank, and they don't see the humor in that either. And what happened was it was it not Molly Ringwald? Was it Winona Ryder in that movie? She goes, define irony. So what happened was this guy started talking about what globalist parasitical propaganda modern comics were, Myers back in the day. And he didn't exactly use those words because he's kind of too much of a nice guy. But him sitting in his car reviewing dog crap Marxist anti-white comics was enough to make these, and those are my words, to make the obese panty-sniffing degenerates put down their coffee and angrily spurg out on him on Twitter. It's like they just poured oxygen into a small channel and helped him tremendously, and also made Comicsgate. Like, much of that was due to left-wing bringing so much energy into something. And they had to inform the world that diversity in comics was literally Hitler, because he sat in his little Kia and talked about comics with holding a cell phone. It's like, oh, that doesn't seem so extreme. Just a fun little YouTube channel. Yeah, it was. He's just a very entertaining guy talking about comics. Even if people weren't interested in comics, it was fun to hear him talk about them. It's like you would think if you didn't want to bring attention to something, you would just let it go by. And unfortunately, the left and the right really can't help themselves. Anyway, you don't understand that comics were made by assholes, except they refer to themselves as marginalized, disenfranchised, monkeypox, and AIDS. It's all just Saul Alinsky type of stuff. They use the Marxist structure of oppressor and oppressed. It's a way to manipulate people. Marx was an idiot. The theories he had were nonsense because the purpose of something is what it does, and Bolshevism just results in human rights violations and mass starvation, and the left seems to think, oh, well, okay, it's like you look at the left-wing heroes, and they go, they weren't really big on the BLT community. In fact, a lot of them were outright racist themselves, and like, oh, well, we're just going to, like, do things differently this time. You mean not starve people to death? Oh, well, we're going to get rid of the wreckers of progress. The dialectic predicts this. So you got a non-European or a gay writer in Saul Alinsky world. That is their shield. Are they oppressed? No, that's all just Marxist doublespeak to manipulate the cattle, dead slaves. So in their worldview, somebody like Myers can't criticize their comics, otherwise he's Islamophobic. None of their words or arguments actually mean anything. They never prove anything. They just label themselves as the asshole oppressed and you as the Chad oppressor, because their comics suck donkey nuts. But also their comics are this dipshit belief system, based on Bolshevism. They think their world will be perfect if only they are in charge and you, of course, were genocided. The comics are their religion, which is why they sell so poorly, but also why they're so emotionally attached to somebody sitting in a car and criticizing the comics, because it's criticizing their God. Everything is a topical fad of the day, and everything is blonde man bad. They have an emotional connection to their religious propaganda. And that's why they have to censor and deplatform, because they can't, they have bad ideas that can't be defended. When you have good ideas, you want to talk to other people and you want your voice heard. And, I always say if the right has free speech, we win. So anyway, Comicsgate was a threat to their belief system. They felt comfortable as long as nobody with a big platform was shining a light on their racist hatred. And then enters Richard Myers to start talking about comics and say how bad they were. And what the narrative was. And the thing is, the comics were worse than even he could say on YouTube. And the thing is, as long as there wasn't any alternatives, things were fine, but that's where Comicsgate comes in. And not that it was a competitor for a billion-dollar comic industry, but just its existence of being able to get online and sell premium graphic novels, which were on average, comics might have been $25 or something plus shipping, but it's all the other stuff. So the average price of the sales is usually going to be more like $50. And that just drove these SJWs just insane with petty, jealous rage, to the point where they spend time creating accounts, tracking Comicsgate, and screen recording videos and taking notes so they could get them in trouble. They're going to tell the teacher and get them busted. But they're not making any money on it, and CG is making money on it because they have YouTube channels and they're selling a product, and even the YouTube channel itself pays something. So, they go monetize the hate. Yeah, Comicsgate, Phantom Menace, people who are monetizing something, they're selling something. Comics are entertainment. And these left-wing kids are doing this for free because a lot of them are out and out mentally ill. Like, they seriously need to be in institutions. Anyway, I mean, Comicsgate, the creator owned the IP too. So it's your story, it's your personal creation that you're also making money off of. It's a whole different psychology when you're working for yourself and your own personal artistic universe. So this made these miserable SJW vermin insane with rage for some reason. And I think jealousy had a lot to do with it. And I think the SJWs are the picked last for sports cliche kids. I mean, not that, I mean, kids just go off and read a book. They didn't care. It's not like Hollywood makes this thing like kids who want to played and the kids who wanted to do something else did something else. It's just like Hollywood exaggerates everything to some degree. But I think the left-wing kids see themselves in some kind of way. And then I look at Comicsgate, and it's not like it's a group of beautiful, tall, athletic chads. It's just normal people, most of them kind of chubby and balding and whatnot. It's just, I mean, not, it's just normal people. It's not like a fitness channel or something. And still they're jealous of it. Maybe it's the artistic stuff. Maybe these anti-Comicsgate people want to do their comics. And then you look at the stuff, occasionally they do, the Kickstarter, right? And the stuff they write is all like gay, lesbian, furry, otherkin nonsense that sells like $2,300 for your campaign. Like, well, that costs you money to do. It's not worth doing. Can you maybe not make propaganda? And they look at you as if you're crazy. Maybe if you're a big name, you're a Kwanzaa, can do this one comic black, it made like 100K, and the second one follow up white. And I don't know if he's made half of that, which actually isn't that unusual. It's usually a big peak and then a big drop, and then you slowly start building your audience up if the people like the stuff. I don't know what he's working on now. If he's like, what's his next comic, Gray or something. So the thing is, they have a hard time doing the same thing that the Comicsgate Phantom Menace crowd is doing, even with all the infighting that's going on. And I guess I'm not going to touch that because SJWs really hate each other. I will say that it's important not to act like an SJW and always act like an adult. The thing is, SJWs are not entertaining. And Comicsgate was like a loose, friendly network of this YouTube community of people helping new artists get started selling comics. And the SJW perverted degenerates hated this, and they coped and seethed and dilated because they needed the corporate infrastructure to support them. And in many cases, I literally subsidized that whole entire branch of the industry. They had to be part of that machine. They couldn't sell on their own because the comics division is subsidized by the globalist main corporations that own them. What Comicsgate did is really impressive, but the SJWs had to look at it and explain to themselves why the name brand Captain America type of comics were selling such relatively small amounts. When Captain America at the time, you had the movies that were billions of dollars in name recognition. Though I will say the movies are probably are definitely on their way out now. Disney's had a long series of bombs. So the thing is, there was a disconnect with the AstroTurf corporate comics as propaganda versus the grassroots Comicsgate network. Comicsgate made them insane because it threatened, or they perceived it to. It has no effect on them. It's tiny, but it hurts their egos that this little alt collection of punk rockers are able to sell comics on YouTube and having fun doing it. And the left is incapable of fun because everything is gay political to them. Even something as simple as a movie. You look at some woke Marvel girl power diversity hire garbage from the last Madame Vagina to Disney Star Wars. I think diversity and girl power doesn't work. So just for those reasons, the movies are already crap. And then there's the plot holes and whatnot. But for the SJW pussies, if a movie is diverse, it's already halfway to being good. That itself is a positive for them, where it's obviously a negative to us. It's good just based on that criteria, but for us, we see how they treat the colors with Mary Sue affirmative action hires. It's absolute cringe. But the SJW can't say this. They can't say that they just want to see a Viking movie with the actual Vikings in it. You mean obese black women, don't you? No, I definitely don't mean that. Because to their crowd, that's wrong think, and you ask them why, and they say something about representation and all the other Marxist buzzwords, but all that nonsense doesn't make the movies any better, and objectively, they're not selling like they used to. Movies aren't just movies to them. They have to be propaganda. Everything has to be a deconstruction of the status quo. So some badass Vikings struggle snuggling and pillaging their way across England, or rather enriching it with vibrant multicultural violence. They can't allow themselves to enjoy a movie where, in that case, the Europeans are in a positive light, blonde man, rad, because they've been brainwashed their whole life with globalist, anti-white bullshit propaganda. If they don't like a movie where they made the English kings and the Vikings black, then they're Islamophobic, and their own crowd will turn on them and put the knives in their back. It doesn't have to make sense. Something else is going on with the left. They have this mass psychosis because they're a herd mentality. It's kind of a fear-based soy system. They engage in witch hunts all the time, and they love the court of public opinion until the long dong of sodomy comes unlubed for them. The left is fundamentally broken to the point that Brianna Wu is calling them a bunch of purity spiraling children who stab each other in the back whenever they can. To them, you can't be on the left if you know that men are not women. Sounds insane, but that's where they are. Or if you homeschool your kids because the teacher is turning them BLT, or there's the wrong element at school. The left is trapped in this death spiral, which would be fun to watch. Unfortunately, we're on the same boat, and they're taking us down with them. So in regards to conventions, it's important to bring light to these things ourselves because nobody else is going to, because they're banning people from doing business in their forum that is, in constitutional viewing, has some state contacts, so there's an issue there. It's discrimination based on wrongthink or even here who you're associated with. Keep in mind, we're talking about people on YouTube who make comic books about frogs and big milkered vampires, but they're rejecting the globalist propaganda and selling independently, so they're somehow vaguely the bad guys. Things are at the point where you say, if you don't like something, go do your own thing, except when they do it, it triggers them into this incandescent rage, because the mainstream is pushing this toxic Bolshevik belief system, which is anti-white, anti-Christian, misandrist, and anti-nation. It's kind of the definition of globalist and woke. Okay, that's fine for the Marvel and DC soy crowd, but Comicsgate wanted to write their own stories, but merely rejecting the Marxist groupthink is hate. Because to them, they are on the message. The view they were brainwashed into is the correct one, because everything they know about everything came from some filthy degenerate in Hollywood when they're not busy on Epstein's... Anyway, so the left is incapable of independent thought because their worldview is predetermined for them by Hollywood and their globalist brainwashed teachers. They must follow the herd and stay within the parameters, or the herd will turn on them and attack, so it leads them to the point of absurdity of telling people their pronouns or having to say with a straight face that men can get pregnant. They can't diverge on any issues, or if they're a public figure anyway, they'll get canceled. So the left has to keep moving further to the left to stay safe, to the point where they'll destroy something and they'll call it a win because at least they got rid of the evil Hugo Boss who the media brainwashed to think were the bad guys. Keep in mind, they look at EVS, Star Wars Girl, and they tell you with a straight face that these are evil, fascist, whatever. And when you ask them what that means and what evidence they have, or even why they think it's a pejorative, or how exactly a few relatively small YouTube channels or anything other than what they seem, pop culture channels talking about how crap movies are now, they don't have the answers to anything because their puppet masters decided that these CG people are rejecting the narrative, so they must be destroyed, even if they can't say exactly what they did. And for Myers, he criticized Mags Visaggio, the comic, but in their Alinsky model, Mags has the privilege of power over Myers, so Mags cannot be criticized. So Mags can attack people from the glass house, but you can't respond because Mags holds the power and privilege in that dynamic. It's based on that pure fiction of Bolshevism, but it gives the left power, but it also causes this purity spiral, which is interesting to watch because even The Rock and Brianna Wu are talking about it. And actually, there's a fair amount of other leftists are talking about the issue with the left is getting into the absurd where they're becoming not effective. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all next episode.